Your news, your views, your values. This is WMNF Tampa 88.5 FM.
You are tuned to WMF Radio 88.5 FM. This is the public affairs program called Community Speaks, and I'm your host, Patro Mobili. And of course, we take your telephone calls and your emails as we talk about what's happening in the world around us. In a new report on how emergency rooms have been turning away pregnant women, promising to keep reproductive rights and good health care on top of the agenda this election. And also, the month of August is Labor and Economic Justice Month on the WMNF mission calendar. And today, everyone agrees there is a homeless problem in the United States, but tackling the crisis varies, especially among mayoral candidates across the nation. And we'll take a look at what local efforts we are doing here. But much of the world has been going to the polls to vote over this year, and we are witnessing a geopolitical realignment between autocrats and pro-democracy defenders. And the autocrats, with help from Russia, are revealing their true colors in the face of election losses. Russia and Venezuela have been using censorship to keep people destabilized as they demand the will of the people be recognized. The news reports that have been coming out, we already know that in Venezuela, the President Maduro has refused to step aside and said that he won the election by a simple majority of the vote. And ever since then, that's been over a week at least, the people have been rising up, and opposition have said they have proof, they have the receipts that they won. And in the meantime, one of Maduro's best friends, Lula da Silva, president of Brazil, who has asked that he show the results to show proof that he won the election, as we join the nations around the world and people going to the polls to express themselves in terms of what issues are important to them and what leaders they want to rule them, to rule their countries. And it has to be by the consent of the people. When people begin to question whether or not the results of the election are real, and leaders cling on to power, what is a red flag oftentimes is those leaders begin to censor very heavily. One app that is called Signal is being blocked in Venezuela and Russia. This app is a popular choice for encrypted messages and people trying to avoid government censorship. And the blocks appear to be part of a crackdown on internal dissent in both countries. And we see in Russia, Ukraine, because Russia invaded Ukraine back in 2022, Ukraine has begun an offensive that caught Russia by surprise. And what we don't understand oftentimes is in that war, Russia has been using it, emptied out its prisons to send prisoners to the front line to play soldier. And they didn't care about how many of those prisoner soldiers they lost. And so I believe by attrition, the Russian troops are just not prepared for the offensive that has come their way from Ukraine. And Russia has been lying to its citizens about what has been happening, that they're not actually at war with Ukraine, that they're engaging in a police action. And so people have not been given the truth, which is very rarely given in Russia. And they've also not have wanted to go to war. Men in Russia have been disappearing, going to Eastern Europe or other places to keep from being conscripted in the war. So Russia has been using its prisoners to fight these wars and not caring about the death toll that they would face. And I think that just on the ground, those numbers have made it impossible for Russia to continue its offensive against Ukraine. Ukraine is now fighting back. We gave them those war jets, fighter jets, and I think that has made a difference on the ground. So in the meantime, Russia has to censor what people know about what's going on, and especially if people are, if there's a political opposition in Russia, of course, they get jailed. We've just seen a prisoner exchange, and that's something that the president of Russia loves to do. He loves to watch movies about prisoner exchanges, and I think he was excited about doing that. Just using people as political fodder. They're just tools to be used for his power. And we've seen when these autocrats around the world go and embrace Russia and use Russia, what happens is the will of the people suffers. We see the same thing in the Sahel, these three countries in the middle of Africa, and Russia's there with its mercenaries. Until the mercenary leader turned on Russia, then Russia, of course, had the mercenary leader killed. But in Venezuela, the blockade follows the disputed results of the country's presidential election, which happened last month, which have led to protests and arrests as Nicolas Maduro clings to power. And of course, according to one U.S. news outlet, the U.S. has recognized opposition leader Edmundo Gonzalez as the winner of the election. In the Internet Monitoring Service, one of those monitoring services called NetBlock said that last week that the signal had become unreachable on multiple internet providers in the country. Maduro has also ordered a block on X, the company formerly known as Twitter, which may not be such a bad thing since so much disinformation comes through. And if Elon Musk isn't on your side, it's probably going to be impossible to get any true information through. But Elon Musk has been violating his own rules in terms of disinformation, engaging in it himself. We're going to see in this election, we're going to see more and more of that use of fake voices, use of fake news, and put down and shared by the owner of X himself, who is really a bad actor in all of this. And as I said, breaking his own rules, will support Silicon Valley. Some right-wing leaders, economic leaders like Elon Musk, are showing their undying support for MAGA, but this time around, the conservatives or the Republicans don't seem to have the upper hand when it comes to the business community. They're concerned about the possibility of restarting the tariff wars or deepening tariff wars and more chaos, is like the killing of the Iranian colonel, which has caused Iran to start retaliatory measures of its own, especially as the elections here get closer, and it looks like it might be close. But the idea that the MAGA leader is going to come back to the White House is worrying to the business community this time around. And there are a lot of new shareholders on Wall Street, people like you and me, who are not institutional shareholders. We don't have millions at our discretion. We're just trying to keep a 401k plan or just be a retail investor. And most of these new investors want regulation. And so that's another reason why the MAGA leader is not favored winner this time by Wall Street, because for the most part, people want regulation. And these guys have long been supportive of deregulating Wall Street, deregulation of business. They're worried about tariff wars. And so economically, the Republicans are not going to be as competitive this time around as people worry about that. But the question also will become, will there be a peaceful transfer of power in this country? And we know that Russia has continued to sow disinformation, sow divisions inside of this country, and we see other players playing a role as well. In Russia, the country's communications regulator has said that this encryption app that people use to communicate among one another and to overcome government censorship violated Russia's legislation, and that's Russia's reasons for getting rid of it. But in actuality, it continues to try to keep people destabilized and keep the opposition destabilized. But we'll talk more about what is happening around the world in terms of elections. We'll talk about that, what is happening here. But I mentioned also there was a report recently about women and how they're being treated in emergency rooms, or better stated, not being treated in emergency rooms. And I wanted to add that to the conversation as we move forward, because, again, that's going to make certain that women's reproductive rights are top of mind in this upcoming election. And despite the fact that the MAGA leader thinks it has died down as an issue, it is far from dying down as an issue when you see especially reports like this. And they said that even women who are in real distress, or even in labor, are being turned away from emergency room because of these laws, especially in Texas and right here in Florida. The report includes some Florida incidences where women have been treated or not treated in emergency rooms and turned away. And that's going to be, I'm going to look for that report and give you more information about that. But it's probably being widely reported right now, talking about that as an issue. This is the real world results, real world proof of what these kinds of laws have wrought inside this country, especially on abortion, when we thought that was settled law going from state to state. States have historically violated people's rights and have needed federal oversight. And we've seen a real agenda to weaken federal power and federal oversight over the ability of states to violate people's civil and human rights. But of course, we want to engage you in this conversation, but I wanted to make certain that we talk about not only these electoral issues and the rise of, autocrats all over the world and the possibility of censorship and, the issues that are going to be top of mind in the upcoming election, including reproductive right, including immigration and economic justice. All of these issues are going to be on the table. And as I also said, part of the elections, issues in the elections are a homelessness crisis. And we're seeing that the cities around the country, across the country, have different approaches to dealing with homelessness in terms of just pushing people from one side of the city to the other. We've seen here the need for, the use of tiny homes, for instance, to house people. We saw it really pick up as a crisis during the epidemic when, the COVID epidemic, people who were homeless were caught out in that epidemic, not sure how to proceed with everyday life. And it made the homelessness crisis even more acute. And there were many attempts and a lot of people who work hard on this issue. But then there are those who vilify because they don't have any kind of solution except to just push people out of sight and out of mind. But we could talk more about what we're seeing happening. But in 2023, a count found that there were at least 653,000 people experiencing homelessness at any given time across the country, an increase of 63,000 from a decade earlier. And the problem has become far more visible. 257,000 people were living on the streets or other places not intended for habitation, and 61,000 more than in 2013. So over the last 10 years, we've seen a huge increase of homelessness, and cities are either reactionary or some are really trying to solve the problem once and for all. Place like a red state like Florida, we're going to suffer a little longer because in Florida, we have a governor that doesn't want federal help and it doesn't want federal oversight. So we're going to see how the state continues to respond to it, but the onus really comes down on governors. And will the state help local cities fight the issue of homelessness? So we're going to talk more about that, but I see that you're already calling in. DJ Spaceship is here to take your telephone calls. He stands ready to help take your telephone calls, and we can also send emails to me here on Community Speaks by writing DJ at WMNF.org. And we'll share more of these stories about what is going to be top of mind in the upcoming election. And will it be a peaceful transfer of power, or will we see a repeat of the loser doing what he can to incite violence in this country? 813-239-9663, 813-239-9663. So there are a couple of topics on the table, but as I said, the month of August is about economic justice, labor and economic justice issues. Those should be top of mind here in this year where we're going to go to the polls and determine which direction for this country. What kind of leadership do you want? And what fears do you hold? Do you share the fears with Wall Street and the business community this time that going MAGA way is not the way to go? 813-239-9663 is the number to call. And we're going to go to Sarasota to get things started and talk to Mike. See what Mike has to add to the conversation. Go ahead, Mike. You said you had a comment.
I did. Good afternoon, Mabili.
Good afternoon.
On the Sunday morning show, there was a discussion in which it was revealed that a white Jewish man had given $600 million to 4 black medical schools. And it was also revealed that the descendants of white abolitionists had been key to establishing the NAACP. And your co-host on that show said that those people do not deserve a cookie because they were only doing what they were supposed to do. And so my question to you is, do you share her opinion that people who do things like that don't deserve any gratitude?
No, of course. I didn't share that opinion. I'm not sure that's exactly what she was saying, but I do see how you could have gotten that. I do believe that people who stand in solidarity strengthens the cause. So, no, as you notice, I didn't say anything when that conversation was going on. But, my opinion, I think that people should be given their props for helping in pushing society forward.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I think that when people, as we all know, people don't have to do the right thing, right? There's lots of things they could do. Somebody could go out and buy a yacht or buy a private island or something like that, right? So
yeah.
I'm glad to hear that you share my opinion that when someone does the right thing, that they at least deserve gratitude and whatever recognition is important. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for calling. I guess you didn't have any opinions about today's topics. We're talking about economic justice. We're talking about the elections and how around the world the elections are revealing autocrats and usually siding or giving some kind of going to Russia to get some kind of solidarity from the strong man there. And that strong man, Putin, is under assault right now because I think the Ukraine war is being undone in terms of Russia's ability to continue to prosecute that war and hold that land that it took from Ukraine. But of course, Ukraine aid is an issue in the U.S. elections. And all of these things are kind of give the United States citizenry an opportunity to weigh in. But we're talking about how elections around the world are being so revelatory right now, and geopolitics is being revealed even more. Iran is accelerating its cyber activity, and it appears meant to influence the U.S. election. And that's according to Microsoft. We all have Microsoft on our computers, and a report from Microsoft should hold some water. But so we'll take a look at what is being said. That it finds that Iran is accelerating its online activity, and it appears to really want to influence what's going on here. This was Friday's report that finds that Iranian actors have recently created fake news sites, impersonated activists, and in one case targeted a U.S. presidential campaign official with an email phishing attack. That I think that's what 45 was complaining about. But Microsoft says that the activity shows how Iran is laying the groundwork to stoke division and potentially sway U.S. voters this fall. U.S. intelligence officials say Russia continues to pose the greatest threat for election disinformation, while Iran is expanding its efforts, and China is proceeding cautiously. And Iran's United Nations mission denied that it planned cyber attacks or other interference in the U.S. election. I guess that's what we expect they would say. But if the online activity is accelerating, as is being seen by Microsoft, then it's worth looking at. This report doesn't specify Iran's intentions besides sowing chaos in the United States. And, after the very disruptive, irresponsible behavior on the part of 45 when he was in that office, it should raise, you almost can understand why that's happening. That destabilization, if that's all they want to do is create chaos. This man is a clear and present danger to U.S. or global security. And so U.S. officials have previously hinted that Iran particularly opposes 45, and they've expressed alarm about Tehran's efforts to seek retaliation for a 2020 strike on an Iranian general. That was ordered by 45. And there was no rhyme and reason for that. He had already pulled out of the nuclear deal that had helped make the world safer and gave some watchdog authority to the nuclear watchdog group to go in and keep a watch on Iran's nuclear activity. If they were really using it for energy, it would have been a whole lot easier to continue to watch that and be a watchdog to make certain that's all they were using it for. But as you see, the mullahs in Iran are always trying to engage in culture wars. And when you see that these authoritarians around the world are insisting on doing that, that's a red flag. It should be a red flag for all of us that they're trying to distract us, especially from the inequality that is going on in any given country. And the power struggle, these people who are struggling for power and reach out to Russia to help them, especially as we've seen in the Sahel, in Russia, on the continent of Africa, should be a red flag for all of us. But we're going to continue to watch local efforts. There's a local group who have been accused of allowing their organization and their website to be used as Russia propaganda. That should be coming to trial soon, so we'll get a clearer view of what has happened there. People have been named. The Russian has been named, the recruiter who recruits these groups. But what we do know is that we see these people, these countries all have an interest in destabilizing the United States, in the Iran case, to get back at the irresponsible 45. But also, we see in the case of China, even though what we're seeing and reported is that China is being very cautious about it, because at the end of the day, China wants to maintain strong economic relationships. And you have to admire at least that much of it, because that keeps people talking, keeps people in relationships, keeps countries in relationships, and that should help efforts for peace. And as I said, August is Economic Justice Month, but we're also seeing a world who are going to the polls and making their voices heard. And we're going to be the same right here. There's a primary election this month, but the general election is in November, November the 5th. We're going to go to Jacksonville and talk to Jiminy to see what is on your mind. Go ahead. You say what here on Community Speaks.
Hi, Mavili. I love your show. I listen a lot. This is my first time calling in.
Thank you.
What you're talking about today has me thinking about kind of grappling with the fact that I've been fed this like idea through movies and like pop culture of what international interference on like America in general looks like, and then seeing like all of this extremism rise up, and then all of like the news coming out, and then also seeing the actions of AIPAC. It's like I'm kind of I'm like understanding what it actually looks like in current reality for foreign nations to like play their cards and try and put their hands on America. Yeah. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about that.
You mean how foreign countries are continuing to try to influence and destabilize the United States and what it can and cannot do around the world?
Yeah, and what it kind of looks like, or what it sort of bubbles up as in our day to day.
Well, definitely we've seen what happened in 2016. We saw that how disinformation created this feedback loop against, for instance, Hillary Clinton, and people believed it, and the press played along oftentimes and didn't challenge what was being done and said. I mean, they would say, well, ask her a question and then end it by, but what about your emails? Anything she had to say was, what about your emails? Even though none of that, it was all influence, destabilization influences from Russia. And they admitted the same thing that we just saw in 45's campaign, that he was hacked. And so this is how it looks. And then you see these fake invitations on social media, and you go, and those organizations never were in existence because that was a fake invitation from Russia. So, it's not just in the movies anymore. There are people who probably been watching those same movies and looking at how they can make it real.
Yeah. It's wild. I especially like once the pictures came out of the Russian spy family that was part of the prisoner switch, that where they had like a little girl who didn't even know that they were Russian. That's sort of like, it really solidified, because I think that's straight out of something that would be in the plot of like a 80s movie.
Yeah, I mean, and it's scary because we know by reporting and by people who have written the autobiographies, the biographies of Putin, that's what he loves. He's just playing these games because he's been part of the spy network in Russia, the FSB, I think it's called, and so this is all he knows, and he's just having fun with it.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for calling from Jacksonville. Hopefully we have an opportunity to talk more and more about this reality, because it does seem surreal to have to actually talk about these things and see that our reporters from the Associated Press all over the world are seeing this evidence, and to see these reports from cyber companies like Microsoft who are seeing this activity. Go ahead, Bob, from Port Richey.
Yeah, just a quick one. Kamala's running for president, and she is vice president right now, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All these things she's promising to do if she gets elected, she's already elected. Why doesn't she just fulfill those things now? She can untax tips. She can do that. It's like, I don't understand why we have to wait for her to be elected for her to fulfill her promises that she's talking about all the time now.
Well, I guess we have one president at a time. And right now, Joe Biden is the president.
Joe Biden's not really there. You know that. Come on.
Well, I don't know that, but I think he is there.
He's not.
I think he's there. I mean, my goodness, man, you got to give man a break. He's how old? So, I mean, he's there. He's doing his job. It's not like doesn't sound at all like 45 when he gets up and make a speech. If 45 isn't on the teleprompter, he sounds like he's out of his mind. He doesn't even sound like he's all there, but I don't hear anybody talking about that.
The idea is, can't she talk Mr. Invisible there to pass that now while she's running? She'd be a shoo-in.
Well, I think she is doing those things. I don't see why she can't do both. So I do agree with you. I mean, she's already in the office.
It's like you're already president.
Right. Well, I mean, if you look at what they've been saying about she was the border czar, she was never the border czar. What she was doing was going to the South American countries to find out the root causes
I realized
as to
that.
people.
I listened to all that, yeah.
Yeah, so
I thought for a while she wasn't doing it either. But if you go down to the facts, she never was told that she was a border czar.
Right, and you have to solve the root causes of any problem.
Right. But that's my view anyway. I just don't understand it.
All right. Well, thank you for calling. Thank you for the question. There's nothing wrong with the question, and it's a fair one. But she's making her pitch in the process of the campaign. We're seeing people go to the campaigns. She's bringing in the crowds, even though the 45 says his crowds are bigger. It's like that's what's more important to him. But yeah, I think, if she's been in the administration, I can pretty much assure you that these proposals are currently being talked about and shared with the current president. And there's a lot that can be done that could boost the Democratic campaign. We'll probably hear more about what is being done currently during the conventions, which are coming up this month. So we'll see if there's some real counter-programming going on there. But on the specific issue of immigration, like I said, you had the last guy in office before, too, and all of this stuff he's promising. Why didn't he do it in a way that didn't violate human rights and didn't violate the U.S. Constitution? And now in this campaign speeches, he's talking about more of the same. Now he's talking about mass deportations. And so, I don't see no real intelligence coming out of that side, but not that I expected it to. But Josh, let's go to Clearwater and see what Josh has to say. Go ahead. You're on the Community Speaks.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up two economic issues. One is close to me, and the other one is just something I'd like to see both parties discuss more, and that's the idea of BYD building $10,000, $13,000 EV cars and dumping them into the United States market. And the reason I bring it up is because I know Joe Biden announced a 100% tariff on it, and I know that the Republicans have been talking about putting tariffs on all kinds of things. And again, with the swing states up like Michigan and those areas, I think about the union guys and their vote, and I just think it's one of the biggest, probably the biggest economic issue coming down the pipeline is our cars. That it seems the American manufacturers, can't make a car that is affordable to a new car, I should say, to the working man to get to work, to get to whatever the jobs they're supposed to do, and then to compete with the Chinese and BYD. How are we going to do it? And I think that there should be other ideas besides tariffs. Maybe that's a short-run fix, but tariffs usually start trade wars.
Yeah, so, and it could spread across industries. I think that you're right. I think what the EV companies, if I follow your logic, I think what EV companies were worried about are, I think that some can compete other than the tricks that Elon Musk tried to put on with a $7,500 credit for those who bought that ugly thing. But that credit is going to dry up until you solve some of the underlying issues. And he wasn't dealing with any of those underlying issues when it comes to EVs. He wanted automation, which is a different focus. And I think that's what made him uncompetitive. And I don't think you're going to find that with companies like Ford, who will continue to go down the road of electric vehicles, gonna do it transition-wise, which I think is economically, makes more economic sense, that you give the consumer an option of getting a hybrid rather than just an automated or just an electric vehicle, because there's range anxieties and all of that. And if it's gonna be affordable, you're gonna have to transition to maybe completely electric. And I think American companies maybe have been watching what Tesla has been doing and its focus on just automation and not electrification, and doing it right and doing it in a way that, like maybe through hybrids, in a way that doesn't give the consumers anxiety and breaks their pocketbook. So you're right. It has to be, I think if the focus is right, it could be affordable.
Well, I don't know where it's going to head. I just think that Ford, GM, they're trying now.
Right.
Their cars, their EV models are like around $30,000. That's even with 100% tariff on a $10,000 car. It's a $20,000 car. And again, I think there's some underlying labor situation with unions and our wages against a Chinese wage. And again, that's why I'd like to hear both parties start talking about it more, because eventually, I mean, we're not the whole world's population.
Right.
We should be able to go to export our vehicles to other markets,
right?
As opposed to just trying to hang on just in this country. Anyways, that was one. The other issue, economically speaking, this month is a long time ago I called up, and everybody was talking about Haiti. And my father was a revolutionary in Haiti. And, you know, I've watched that all my life. And right now there's Kenyan troops over there. And people, I mean, talk about just going to a job. They can't even, you know, go down the block sometimes or go to the hospital. I have one working hospital in all of Port-au-Prince right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe not your show on Sunday, they said, well, they're building a hotel down there. And I was like, that's nothing. That's nothing for what they need. And I just go back to what I said then, I'll say it again now, is I think one of the best ways to help Haiti, especially with economic justice, is to allow a larger cap of immigrants to come to the United States from Haiti. I swear, I believe that is the only way to help Haiti. If more of them come here, get educated, build businesses, and start trading back with Haiti, will be the only chance for Haitians to have some sort of economic justice when they work every day.
So they work here, and they'll send money home and help build up.
I just hope all your listeners, if that ever comes up, to remember that, like, I know we have problems with immigration, but some places, they need our help. It's in the Western Hemisphere. I mean,
right.
We won't even send our own troops anymore. The United States sent troops to Haiti so many times in the last 50, 70 years. And then it's like we gave up. And now Kenya's got troops over. At least the world's trying to help. But they are right here, right next to our country. And again, I just beg the listeners to have an open mind if and when it comes up, whoever's in office, as far as economic justice goes.
Good point. And that could work both ways, because there's a lot of the problem has come from the United States as well. Those guns that the gangs are getting, a lot of them flowed right out of Florida.
Well, I'll say this. Once a long time ago, I forget if it was Brazil national team was going to come play soccer against Haiti. That's probably like 10, 20 years ago. And I remember one of the catches by the Haitian government was to, if you brought a gun and turned it in, they'd give you tickets to go see Brazil play Haiti. And it was a huge thing in Haiti.
Oh, man.
And it was funny because my dad, my cousins, they said, well, there's two things in Haitians know how to make all day long, and that's guns and soap. And so next thing you know, everybody started putting guns together to get tickets. So I don't know about if it's American guns. I don't think it's any. I don't know. But I leave it at that. Just, you know, if the chance comes up to allow the quota to be higher for Haitians to come to this country, I hope people have an open mind and let it happen.
Yeah, well, you know, some did get temporary protective status after the big hurricane, and that's been extended just recently. So there are those who are here and are working and are able to stay here and to continue to do exactly that. Hopefully that will continue to happen, that they will send money home, and that would help Haitian Americans build up Haiti. Thank you for your call, Josh.
Thank you.
That's from Clearwater. Thank you for calling, 813-239-9663. Let's go to Sarasota and see what Mike has to say. Go ahead, Mike. You say what?
Good afternoon, Billy. Thanks for taking a second call from me. DJ Spaceship said it was okay. After I hung up, you were talking about how Iran is attempting to destabilize the United States. Well, I wonder if anybody is going to recognize how much the U.S. is trying to destabilize Iran.
Yeah, I recognize that, especially under the last administration. Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, underneath a very important fact is that underneath the Bush administration, and I think this happened in 2006, it was revealed in congressional testimony that the United States, through the CIA Black Ops operation, was spending $400 million a year to destabilize Iran from the inside with violence and terrorism. So, and of course, you know, that was a revelation you don't hear very much, and I can't tell you whether it's carrying on because it's part of CIA Black Ops. And then this other things they've done recently. A missile killed Ismail Haniyeh in Iran, and that missile was probably paid for by the United States and came from the United States' ally Israel. And then, in recent years, the United States has led the fight to seize all of Iran's financial assets and to blockade it from selling oil. And then all this comes on top of the fact that the Shah of Iran was backed by CIA, and they had to have a violent revolution to unseat him. And he was a brutal leader. So I think, and you know, if we're going to talk about, you know, Iran destabilizing the United States or taking any efforts, we have to realize that what they're doing is very restrained and civil compared to what we've done to them.
So far, because they've had to be, and don't forget how Russia and Iran both work together to provide guns for current destabilizing efforts, such as Russia giving weapons to the Houthi rebels, and of course Iran helping to fund Hezbollah. So you know, destabilization is a two-way street.
Well, and as long as we're talking about destabilization, let's look at what the U.S. does around the world. I mean, we have the global war on terror. I think was involved in something like 80 countries. You know, where we were interfering in all those countries, attempting to kill people, political people we didn't like. And of course, you know, the U.S.'s record, even in this hemisphere, is well known for us attempting to destabilize people, destabilize countries. You know, so long as we get the right leader we want, the one who's cooperative with us.
That's true. I mean, you know, we used to talk about that during you mentioned the Bush administration. Of course, that gave George W. Bush, after the 9/11 attacks, they were ready to do any and everything. But Dick Cheney, we forget, he was the dark horse in that administration, and he came to Washington with an agenda of raising tensions in the world so that we can do exactly what you suggested they wanted to do, and that is use these tensions to go after and get the leaders that we want. If you notice, even after the 9/11 attacks, not only were they not just talking about Afghanistan, and they suddenly started talking about Iraq. And there were some guys on the neocons, what we used to call them, neocons, that were saying real men go to Tehran. So they wanted Iran. You're right. It was all about destabilization. It can be a political juggernaut for the United States, a tool, as you say, for the United States. Yeah.
And then another...
Mike, we got to go ahead and let somebody else get on.
Okay.
I know we could talk all day. But thank you for calling 813-239-9663. Let me go see what Ron in Lakeland has to add to the conversation. Go ahead, Ron.
Billy, thank you so much for taking my call. I love your show. It's always good to listen.
Thank you.
At the bottom of the hour, you had a caller that asked why doesn't Kamala Harris do something now? I think they were talking about immigration. I had a similar experience with a friend of mine on Facebook over the weekend, and she wanted to know why Kamala Harris doesn't do something now about how high grocery prices are and how expensive things are. And I think that's an important question to ask. Why can't the vice president do things? But I think a lot of times what happens, especially with this grocery price thing and prices, is we don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Exactly.
One of the things that's going on is the Biden administration, excuse me, has taken Albertsons and Kroger's to court because they don't want them to merge. Because when those two stores merge, we're going to lower competition. People aren't going to get paid as much. They're going to be able to pick the prices. So this administration is doing what they can, but again, what do they have to deal with? They have to work with Congress. They have to work with Republicans who don't want to see them do anything.
Right.
So I think there's more that goes on behind the scenes than what we know about. And we can ask those knee-jerk questions like, well, why don't they just do it now?
Right.
When we just maybe Google the question or look up maybe an alternative news source, Democracy Now!, Politico, you name it, The Guardian. There's plenty of alternatives out there. And then we could maybe learn more about these things. But I love it that you're having the conversation, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Ron. We will continue to have that conversation because, we know that grocery stores, for instance, like as I mentioned last week, can get together cartel style and decide to elevate prices. They just agree to elevate prices, which is just gouging me and you. And that's your inflation. 813-239-9663. Looks like we have less than 7 minutes to go, 8 minutes to go here on Community Speak. So we're going to see if I can get one more call in. Let's go to Gulfport. See what Lenny has to say. Go ahead, Lenny.
Thank you for taking... Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for taking my call. I have a comment. You were talking about economic justice. I was watching a Sunday news show or listening to, and it was Face the Nation. It had J.D. Vance on it. And there was a question about his comments about parents of children having more votes than others.
Yeah.
And he said he was trying to get to a point that parents should have more say, and that our policies should be more family and parent oriented. And it sounds like they're trying to copy or get the Democrat ideas about family leave and child care and those kinds of things that have been the Republicans have continuously opposed.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting what he was saying, that the Republican policy towards families is and doesn't measure up at all to their actual policies, especially in a state like Florida. And the host just let that go by completely, did not challenge him at all about how can you say such things when you're against parent leave and against expanded Medicare for Medicaid,
and really
universal health care. And, how can you say that you're for, in Florida right now, the state declined taking money for feeding children during the summer.
Mm-hmm. Kids went hungry this summer.
Yeah. So, they say that, it sounds good. It sounds like they want to be towards families, but in reality, they oppose them, and that has to be challenged. They want to sound like they're Democrat and liberal, but they're really not.
They're not. They're far from it. In fact, that's their sworn enemies. And you're right. I think, he figured he better go and find a Democratic-style answer to fix the stupid comment that he made in the first place, talking about this country is run by childless sex women, and then they'll go on to talk about how an adult should get their children's vote, which meant he sounded like he was saying adults should be allowed to vote twice or more, how many ever kids they got. That's very undemocratic. So he had to fix that by going and finding something about family leave and all of that and pro-family policies to fix that undemocratic answer that he statement that he made.
Right, and so they want to sound and take the Democrat platform and act like they're doing it. That Trump had family-oriented policies. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, the host on the Face the Nation just let that slide. Did not challenge that at all. So that's what we need to do. We need to challenge them and say, you want to help families, will actually do it then with the legislation.
And do this, This one legislation is already out there for you to do. I agree. And I don't know why Face the Nation didn't push back. Is it Kirsten, the lady again now? I'm not even sure who hosts that show.
Well, it was a man named John. I tried to find the name of who the host is. But it was yesterday's program, I believe.
Yeah, so it sounded like...
J.D. Vance was on it. So, so please go, if you can, look at it and find that segment. Just flabbergasting.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised they didn't push back. It probably was an agreement with the campaign. We'll just give you an opportunity to fix what you said earlier.
I think the host had a different agenda. He was wanting to push more on that comment directly, but rather than question, the actual Republican policies towards families and how detrimental they are. And that's why, couples are postponing having babies because they can't afford them. It's a proven...
buying homes and all of that.
Yeah, the proven statistic. The U.S. Census.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lenny. Thank you for calling from Gulfport. This has been Community Speaks. I'm going to go ahead and get on out. I want to thank DJ Spaceship sitting in, taking the telephone calls, and got your emails. I see the one email talking about regarding destabilization and global strongmen, authoritarian. They saw Trump do it, so they doing it, and that could be right. We got to continue to talk about economic justice, labor and economic justice issues throughout the month of August. So keep it tuned right here to WMNF Radio. This has been Community Speaks. My name is Patro Mobili, your host, and I'm going to go ahead and make room for Blaney Whalen, who's coming your way next. We're going to get back to the music with It's the Music Monday, but this has been part of the public affairs programming, and so keep it tuned. We're going to get some news update from The Scoop, and then we'll be back to the music. It's WMNF Tampa.
Come board with WMNF and celebrate our 45th anniversary for just $45. Support your favorite station while bowling your heart out. I'm DJ Spaceship, and I'm calling my space cadets to challenge the terrestrial talents of Mario and Joe from the conversation. Meanwhile, the wave makers are polishing their skills to shine brighter than a supernova ready to roll strikes so hot, they'll set the lane on fire. Join one of our star-studded teams or gather your own crew of dudes and dudettes for an out-of-this-world bowling experience. Happening on August 18th from 1 to 3 p.m. at Pen Chasers. More information at WMNF.org/events.
This is The Scoop for Monday.
I'm Megan Bowman with the WMNF News headlines. Kindergarten through 12th grade students around the Tampa Bay area are heading back to school today, and AAA Auto Club is issuing a safety alert for drivers. Spokesperson Mark Jenkins says people should be prepared for heavier than normal traffic, especially at first, since many parents drive their kids to school the first few days back. He says drivers should add an extra half hour for their morning commute this week. A recent study from AAA says more than half of Floridians drive through a school zone or pass a school bus stop on their driving routes. Jenkins says it will be important to adjust your driving habits since these locations have not been active for the past few